Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast, where we help people to combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Steven Twohig. Steven is, as he would refer to, a guide, an agent of change, a normal guy who is committed to mastering the art of change, having spent well over 10,000 hours required to master anything. In the business world, Steven has worked with companies ranging from startups around the world to multi-billion-dollar multinational corporations. He has helped thousands of business leaders to be more productive, strategic, and successful. He is personally responsible for tens of millions of dollars in sales and has been a linchpin for multiple products and division launches across multiple sectors. In the human development world, he has over 2 decades of study and facilitation, hundreds of face-to-face interventions, 20 years of raw feedback from superstar mentors, and over 1,000 hours of training directly under the world's leading life business strategist, Tony Robbins. Tony commissioned him to interview over 10,000 business leaders from around the world to find out what made them successful and help thousands transform their business. He is an international speaker and has traveled around the world teaching business strategies and human transformation. He was a founding member of the Forbes Coaching Council and has spent over 2 decades in the human development industry. He has worked with and for the likes of Tony Robbins, Chet Holmes, Gene McNaughton, and Jason Cisneros. Steven's passion and life goal is to create a world where everyone reaches their true potential through strategic intervention and planning. So please welcome to the show, Steve Twohig. Steve, thank you for being here today. And wow, I'm tired just reading the bio.
Thanks, Bob. I'm tired reading it as well. Thank you very much for that very, very powerful introduction.
Oh, thank you. And there's a lot to it. And that's, if we can, before we get into that, because that goes many places and I want to try to get to some of those spots, but tell us a little bit more about you and how you got into doing what you're doing today.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not your, there's a lot of, I've run into a lot of just very powerful, inspiring, wise individuals. And unfortunately, that's not the world I grew up in. I grew up in a world of pain, struggle. You know, at 3 years old, my stepmother tortured me and my sister, and that caused a lot of shadow and a lot of trauma. And then I grew up around bikers and this and that and the other, and had to really pull myself out of that hole to get to where, you know, to the point to where, you know, I was Tony's top guy in the business sector kind of thing. How do I get from here to there? Well, I had made a commitment somewhere along the way that I was going to live a mission.
Okay.
And so I have a ritual every day when I get up in the morning and get on my knees. I say this prayer, and then I get up and I grab my necklace. I put my necklace around my neck and I go, okay, what did I do today? What am I going to do today? And I state my mission. My mission is to create a world where everybody reaches their true potential by making the impossible possible. My purpose is to channel light, love, and grace. Put my necklace around my neck. I go throughout my day, and at the end of the day, I take my necklace off and I go, what did I do today to move the dial? What did I do today to push the limit, to make it a little more accessible for people, to make that possible, that impossible possible, the I can't to I can kind of thing. And really, that's what's led me. I mean, I can remember when I was working at Gateway, I was one of the top 8 employees in the entire company. This was back when they had 15,000 people before they started cutting. And I quit that job to go work for Tony Robbins. And this was 2006, I think it was, 2007, something like that. And everybody kept coming to me. They said, you're crazy. What are you doing? Like, where are you going? I'm like, I want to live a mission. I want to have a life of purpose. The 7 basic human needs, Tony calls them 6 basic human needs, but I've uncovered there's a 7th need, which is purpose. We all have a need for purpose. Right. That hero inside of us wants to know, what is this journey for? And so we want to create meaning. The mind, we talk about the mind, right? The mind is a 2 million-year-old software application. Right. It's meant for survival, and it does that by creating meaning and then engaging that meaning as quickly as humanly possible, right? As quickly as possible, wants to engage that meaning in a way that's meaningful. Right. So, you know, if I have an experience where this is going on, again, for me, it was abuse, trauma, a lot of that. So I had to work my way out of my perceptions of the way life was, because life, Alan Watts says, life, imagine there's a giant mirror in front of you, and there's no edge.
Right.
Well, our life that we're experiencing is nothing more than a reflection. They call it projection. They call it shadow. We got all kinds of terms for it, right? But you're not seeing me for me. You're seeing me based upon the projection of me or somebody like me, and you're not experiencing me in my fullness. And so my when I come from that much trauma, that much pain, that much struggle, pulling yourself away from that, you start to separate from these. And the amount of work that I continually still have to do on a daily basis, it's allowed me to work a few muscles to say, okay, when you do this, this is what's going to happen.
Right.
And you get good at it long enough, you start teaching people how to do it, and things start to happen. It's kind of like I just hung out in the gym long enough before people started asking me questions. Right?
Well, and that brings up a great point, because you talk about the mind. It all starts there, right? It starts in the mind and wanting, desiring, like you said, having that desire to be part of something, a mission. And then you go from there. What are some of the things I love that image you have on the wall behind you there, because that's we talked about that. If you can talk about, just mention some of those points, because I think we can share that with people and give them a good insight as to what you.
This is a construct. Yeah. So this is a construct. So I started, a certified NLP, certified shadow work facilitator, certified neurolinguistic programmer, certified business strategy through Cornell, certified strategic intervention coach through Tony Robbins. All these different trainings and all these different tools that were all impacting people, I was studied addiction, addictions degree, stuff like that. Like, you start to study all these things on how people are helping people change.
Right.
For me, that's what it was. And I saw Tony stand up. Actually wasn't Tony, it was another man like Tony, stand somebody up, and with 20 minutes, boom, their life had changed dramatically. Right. I saw Tony do it, and that's why I went. He was the master. I didn't see anybody doing it at his level. So I went and spent a decade with him and studying all these different modalities of change and transformation. And one day I was going to lead a workshop in Kansas City for a bunch of facilitators to show them, what I'd learned. I'm like, well, what have I learned? And, Tony's voice popped in my head. My mentor's voice popped in my head, said, well, the most powerful force in our human dynamics is our identity. Our identity controls everything. I'm like, okay, started there. I'm like, okay, but what does identity control? How does it control it? What? I don't understand. Like, oh, come on, this has got to be better. Then I'm like, what's going on right now? Like, right now, in this moment, what's going on? And as I'm doing that, what's going on with what's about? And I caught myself listening to myself.
Wow.
The voice, the chatter, they call it monkey mind. Yeah. There's all kind. I went and sat with Zen Buddhists, and I've done the go drink the Peruvian psychedelic drinks, and I've done I've got all this different stuff, and it's like I caught this, because see, most people don't have thoughts. Most people's thoughts have them.
Okay.
Right.
Wow. Right.
We have this radio station that's in tune in our head. Call it your default mindset.
Yeah.
And that's your plot. That's your narrative. It's the filter of the world. Have you ever been driving with somebody? Maybe you're driving with your significant other. You're coming home from date night. It's a great night. You're driving down the road. You talk about how great the night was, and then you bring up something about how you didn't do the laundry, or you didn't do something, or something that she's frustrated for, or if you've ever been on the other side of that, right? And then all of a sudden the game changes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden the story changes, right? Because in the narrative, in the plot, there was no backstory. That backstory hadn't been entered into it yet. And so everything was great, but then you load that backstory, all of a sudden now the whole reality. Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Right? Yep. Ask my wife, she'll tell you.
5 years. Yeah.
Exactly. My wife will tell you that I have, right? So that's our plot. It's where our default, they call it the default mode network. Okay. It's interesting. There's a lot of you don't see the reality for what it is. Like, you see what you think is reality, but it really is just the construct that you've created in your mind. We don't, what's wrong is always available, and so is what's right. Yeah. It's which one are you looking for, kind of thing, right?
Right.
That's the plot, the narrative. Yeah, and I created a 4-week process. I call it the mental cleanse process, where we go in and we wipe out that mental chatter in their head. Because, business, I've worked with tens of thousands of businesses. Business is 80% psychology, 20% mechanics. People come to me for what I call the boss, but then they find out there's all this other stuff going on. And when you clean this area up, this area then becomes obvious, because most business owners, nobody can come into your business and tell you what you need to do to be successful.
Right.
That's just, you've got to know your business better than I do. The problem is you're typically not seeing the resource that's right in front of your face, because you got some kind of a narrative at play, some kind of a story that's keeping you stuck.
Right.
Well, if you tell yourself something long enough, it gels into a story. Or if an experience happens that's really intense, The more intense the experience, the easier it is for you to recall it. That's a story.
Okay.
A story is those things that I remember when I was a kid. This is where
Right.
shadow. Carl Jung calls it shadow.
Okay.
In India they call it samskara. Energy work, they call it breaking up energy. Like there's a lot of stuff that happens down hero's journey. We're all living a hero's journey. Like I think this is amazing, Bob. For me, it blows me away. If you think about it, since the entire beginning of human interaction and communication, there's only been one story that's ever been told: the hero's journey. You go look at every movie you've ever watched, every show you've ever watched, and when you go down underneath the water and you look at the framework, there's a certain path that every story follows.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. You've been told the same story. Your parents were told the same story. Your grandparents were told the same story, and your grandparents, and all the way back to the beginning of time, around the world, only one story being told.
Wow.
Isn't that odd? And so I think what I found at this what I call the third influence point, is that we all have this groove. We're all living a hero's journey. You go in and you look at Stanislav Grof. He's got this thing called the 4 matrices of birth, on how we all have gone through. We've all gone through one. There's one trauma that every human has gone through, and that's the birthing process.
Right.
And the birthing process, interestingly enough, filters it looks much like the hero's journey. There's 4 stages, right? And so we all have stories that we tell ourselves.
Okay.
And it's all story. What I found out is it's all story. I do work with people and they go, yeah, you told me this and I did the work, and now I found out was not only was this a story, this was a story. It's all story. It's, if you're going to tell yourself a story, though, tell yourself a story worth telling.
Right.
Right? So that's where we do the work in the story. And then we have our beliefs, which are our likes, our dislikes. Give everybody, what's the matter?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that odd? Word. Now think about that word again. From a narrative perspective.
Wow. You just realize that. What's the matter? Well, why do you have to point to the negative?
Well, matter. What is matter? Matter is reality.
Okay.
Right? What's the matter? What's the reality?
Right.
That's the belief. What's the matter is what is your belief? What's the belief you're holding that's causing you pain and struggling, right?
Okay.
And then we have our emotions, or what actually this is energy. Right? Each one of these has a default, what I call in a home. So you have a default identity that we live out of. We have a default mindset. Okay. We have default origin stories. We have certain beliefs that we hold to be true. We have an emotional home. So sometimes the tail wags the dog, sometimes the dog wags the tail. And then that drives the decisions we make, which is where strategy sits. Everybody comes to me for this.
Right.
But the real work typically is somewhere in here. Wow. Somewhere in here. And then that decision then leads to the action that you take.
Okay.
These are the 7 influence points. And so when you go study cognitive behavioral therapy, narrative level, NLP, narrative level, hero's journey, story level, there's different areas. We have EQ, we have positive psychology, we have strategy, we have habits. Each one of these pockets, then every modality of change that you've, Michael Singer's Untethered Soul fits at the narrative level. It operates at the narrative level. They all operate at one or more of these 7 influence points.
Right. And
so as the mastery of this is that when you can master this, when you can take this construct, then what that allows you to do is say, oh, okay, that's going on. Okay, well, I'm going to use this technology, right? You can access it. It's like a library. It's like a library shelf where now your books are all in order, so you can use the technology in a more effective way.
Okay, so you're using a card catalog with that system, if you will, in the library.
Exactly. Exactly. This is how the mind processes. This is how we do or don't do anything.
Right.
Like anything, like any decision that you've ever made, 7 basic human needs is identity. Spiral dynamics, that's identity. DISC assessment, that's identity. Right. Stuff that sits up there. And isn't it true that, do you have kids, Bob?
Yes, I got 3 boys.
How's the youngest one?
The youngest one's 18.
Now you're just bragging.
Yeah.
Now you're just bragging. I got 7 kids. I got 5 left in the home, right? So I didn't need to hear that. But if your 18-year-old was in the other room and there's always that specific scream, right? Is that talking about typical kid stuff where they're kind of learning to be themselves? I'm talking about got his foot stuck in a vise and it's breaking off or something. Right. There's that. Your whole demeanor would shift. Like you'd throw your headset off, dad mode, the dad identity would come in, and there'd be a whole different set of language patterns that you'd use. You'd be living out of a completely different story. Your belief system would shift. Your emotions would shift. Your entire process would shift. I call it pulling threads. And all I do when I'm facilitating somebody is start pulling on these threads, and the whole tapestry of their decision-making process. I can find their suffering. I can find their gold. Like it allows me to do the work necessary to help them really reach where they're looking to reach.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because I can think of two different ways that you mentioned that dad mode, if you will. One time my oldest son was doing something with a fish tank, broke a piece of glass, and he comes in and he's, Dad, and he's looking at me, you know that tone. Okay, something went wrong. Go into the mode of cover. Piece of glass went into his leg. Okay, I don't like blood. I take it on myself, but it was mode of fix, heal, make sure he's okay, make sure he's not passing out, get it fixed. That was the mode. My youngest just had his wisdom teeth pulled out this Monday. He came home, mouth full of blood, and all of a sudden I'm getting woozy. Like, wait a second, total two different dynamics, because there was nothing I could do about it. I went through that. I know what he was feeling, and I took that on. And it was like trying to comfort him. It's like, uh-oh, here we go. So
because that dad role is what I call a sacred identity.
Yeah.
We have sacred, but you also have that identity in you that feels not good enough. Right? The identity that feels, and here's what I think. I think that my belief system is that our culture, our society, it breeds the victim identity.
It does.
Reach outside of myself to make me happy. I was working with this mental cleanse process. I run a mastermind group, and there's this gal. It's like, okay, I take them through this journey where they identify this architecture inside them, and she's like, I was waiting for God to come into me. I was waiting for this to come into me. Why are you looking outside of yourself for anything?
Yeah.
It all starts internal first. We have two worlds. We have the external world. We have the internal world. I can't control the outside world. Not really. I can influence it to a certain extent, but the inside world, the problem becomes, this is the only real control I have. But most people don't. Most people don't do the work necessary to change. And so they lead lives of quiet desperation.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's about understanding masculine, feminine energy sits at the identity level. Right. And when you can learn to control yourself and you start to get empowered, you can start to bob and weave. You can start to move in the direction that works for you. And when you change the way that you show up in an environment, you change the environment that you show up in.
And that's a great point, because I know Tony learned from Jim Rohn, and Jim Rohn used to, talk about that scenario like you mentioned. You can't control the things outside of you. Focus on what you can do in your house, not at the White House. Focus on what you can do on your street, not on Wall Street. You can control what you can do, and the outside factors won't matter, because you're building the value internally. You're building that greatness from within. You understand who you are and what you can do. And that builds your strength, so you can bob and weave, because you get outside those doors and all bets are off, man.
Well, and Jim Rohn, when he talked about influence, what he said was influence is subtle and it's powerful.
Yeah.
Because you can't, like, if you're running like 40 miles an hour, you're running in riding on a horse. You're riding on the horse 40 miles an hour east, and you're trying to go west, and you try to jerk that, you're going to fall off the horse. Yeah. You won't get somebody to go off track, but you might get them to nudge just a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's the way the body works and the mind works as well. When I'm mastering change, which is I'm the founder of, we have two types of processes. We do experiential retreats, workshops, online trainings. All my coaching is experiential. And there's two types of transformation that I work with. I work with what's called a quick switch, which is where I do shadow. We do the shadow work where we dig down in the answer. The question is, if I were to do work today, it would be around my resistance to showing up the way I want to show up, having a conversation with somebody I know I need to have, showing up the best version of me. But whatever we all have resistance, right? And then we dive down underneath the water and look at why they're resisting showing up the way they want to. And what happens then is that's a quick shift, because all of a sudden now they see, oh, no wonder, story that's been loaded underneath the water that they're not dealing with this. Time and time again, people go, mantras. I'm okay. He's okay. You're okay. As if we're trying to train. And mantras are important. They're vital because it helps deal at the narrative level. But story, it's like this.
You got to break that down.
Yeah, you got to break that down. Because like I stand in front of the mirror and I shout, I'm okay. I say I'm okay. I get to I'm okay. 10 minutes later, I'm not okay. Well, it's because you got a story loaded underneath the water. We think that our consciousness is like this, like slow, very mechanical process that it's like I can train my unconscious mind by reciting something. No, the unconscious mind is where the game is at. It's where most of our personal power comes from. Right. Like when we talk about gaining personal power, you can't go out and grab something and then have power. That's not how it works. Right. You have to reach down in yourself and find that part of you that you've hid, repressed, or denied and pull it up into the surface and go, this is mine.
Right.
That's so where I find most work. Yeah, because and it's like, or somebody will be able to do something, but they're unconscious.
Yeah.
Unconscious mastery. I take it out, we pull it out, we make it conscious, so that it's like, well, I have the ability to do this. Okay. Can you do anything else? No, I don't. I can't. Like, for example, let me think of a good example. I've got the ability to talk anybody out of anything. Do you? Okay. And have you ever just listened to somebody and worked with them? Because if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to pull back that mastery and go, hang on a minute, try doing something else and try doing something else. And they'll typically find now there's 5 different ways. No, why would I ever want to do that? This always works.
Right.
Yeah, but if you're always doing just this one thing, you're missing a range of your capabilities, and this is where personal power comes from. Growth is always uncomfortable. It's rarely convenient.
Right.
Because if it were comfortable, we would already have grown. If it were convenient, we would have already taken the time. So growth is always uncomfortable. It's rarely convenient because it steps us out of our threshold of control.
Right.
And that the mind goes, that's dangerous.
Yeah. That's it. Prehistoric mind, like you said, fight or flight. Okay, no, I'm not comfortable. Danger.
Yep.
Run.
Yep.
And do you see where people can, when you do a quick switch, is that something that lasts a long time, or is it a repetitive process?
That's the key. Yeah. So I was working for Tony, and people would pay me $10,000 to come through this training, and then I would come back on the outside. And I was calling, because I'm committed to the change. I wasn't committed to, a lot of people come to Tony because they want to be the best of. I didn't want that. I just want to learn how to change, do all this change work so that I could be the best change agent I could. I'm an agent of change, right? And so I would contact every client afterwards and go, okay, where are you at with integration? They come through this process, they feel on top of the world, and then they go back to their business, they go back to their lives, and they do the same things.
Right.
Well, why? Did you do this? No. Did you do that? No. Did you do this? No. Tell me you did this. No. You didn't do any of this? No. Well, you just paid $10,000 and you didn't do anything. How do you expect anything to change? So I started doing a mastermind group, an integration group, where I started serving these business owners, showing them how to integrate each piece. That's how I came up with what I call the BOSS, the business owner, business operating system and strategy. It's a way for you to continually integrate in your business as a business owner, right? And so the hard answer here is no, it won't stick, because I go in, and I'll give you an example. So I'm working with a gal. She's suicidal. She comes on the line, and she had all these challenges going on. And I'm like, first thing, it was like suicides are, to me, she wasn't suicidal, but she had suicidal thoughts. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between the two, right? So first I nailed it down. So you're committed. Yep, I'm committed. You're not gonna? No, I'm not gonna. And if something comes up, are you committed to calling 3 people? Yep, making sure that I laid all the groundwork, because I didn't want to, I don't like to mess in that area, right? And then we start tracking everything down, and what we find out is, well, this lady just living in a big, again, we talk about that victim.
Yeah.
Right. So everything is a problem. Everything is this. Everything is that. She doesn't see a way out, because a victim can't see a way out.
Right.
If I see a way out, then I can't be a victim.
Right.
Identity. Right. And so we did some work. I loaded another identity in her. This lady just happens to have. There's this very powerful. There's certain identities that are just powerful. If you're a mom, if you're a father, if you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you're a healer, if you're this, like those identities are sacred identities many times. So I locked into her sacred identity. and we connected the two dots. We connected the two. What does this person need? We did some deep unconscious work where we tied neurons together, wire together, fire together. Anyways, so afterwards, it was, what do you need to do now to bring this identity? Because if you're so conditioned to come out of your lower identity, that victim in you, it's like a rut.
Yeah.
Right. It's like default.
Yeah. You got to get out of that rut. Right.
Well, so in Serbia, I do a lot of work with Serbian. One of the places I enjoy traveling is in Serbia. And in Serbia, there's a city, the capital is Belgrade. Okay. Belgrade sits right on the line where the East meets the West. And so there's constant clashes, and most of the wars that they get stuck between aren't theirs. Wow. The city of Belgrade has been attacked over 40 times in its lifetime, and they've rebuilt it every time. I'm here to tell you, Bob, if my house got attacked, it might not take more than one time for me to go, I don't think I'm going to go back there. But what that speaks to, first off, it speaks to the willingness for these people to continue to rise above, which is one of the reasons why I love that country. It's just so inspirational just to see they're willing to do whatever it takes to survive. But what it also tells me is it shows me how the human condition is stuck on a default, and how we get in a rut and we don't like to move from that rut no matter what. And so if we don't build another rut, like, so you imagine if there's a rut in a road and a car's driving down the road and it gets close to that rut, what does it do? Yeah. Right? It falls right in that rut. Yeah. But if we take another rut and start to build another rut right next to it, and that gets deeper and deeper, what it does is it takes those two ruts and it makes one giant rut.
Right.
That's what we want to do. We want to build. Integration is everything. If you can come and learn, I can teach you some magical stuff that'll make you like that. If we had time, I could do stuff that would just blow you away, and you would go, holy cow, I didn't know that was even possible.
Right.
But if you don't take that and integrate it in your life, well, you just wasted both of our time. You just, for me, that has there's no juice in that. It's part of the reason why I had to go out on my own, because I'm so firmly believe I'm not going to work with you unless you're willing to integrate. Like, don't waste my time, kind of thing.
And that's important because, it is value for you. You understand that value. It's making sure they understand that value of what it can do and how it can work in their life. That taking those steps are critical. Taking that action, it's going to improve, whatever you're here for, to get past, to grow into the better side of it. It's always interesting, and you get into the faith-based scenarios, as with what Jesus says, we make it complicated. It can be simple, and you can have a life of excellence, but you just do these certain things. Don't complicate it. Just do these certain things. There's 10 commandments. It's not 25. It's not 30. It's not, 11 steps. It's 10. If you follow those, you'll stay on a good road. But
the mind naturally looks for here's the problem. The mind craves clarity, and it does not like complication. It doesn't like confusion. That's why when I'm working with people on their business, I go, this is way too confusing. You're making it way too hard. And people are going to turn away from that because people are almost allergic to complication. But yet when we come at a problem, we almost expect the solution to be, it has to be complicated. Right. It has to be hard, because if it wasn't hard, I would have already been there, right? So, one of the things that I've learned to do, and I got this from Tim Ferriss, if you're getting ready to enter into something, you're trying to figure out what to do, first question you should ask yourself is, well, what if this were easy? Okay. Just asking yourself that question goes, oh, well, if it were easy, I'd just make this phone call. Okay, well, then go do that.
Yeah.
Right? Because, especially when you see successful people assume something has to be complicated. Otherwise, it's got to be hard. No, it doesn't have to be hard. It could be so easy that you overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
That is, so that should be one of the first questions as you step onto the road to anything. It's like, what if this were easy? What I find is it's always a stripping away. The personal development that I've learned, spent the first half of my life trying to build my ego, and now I'm starting to strip away at all those things that don't serve me. Right. Michelangelo said, they asked him, they said, how did you, there's this big rock. Yeah. How did you see this Michelangelo? Like, imagine Michelangelo, David, the statue of David. How did you make this beautiful piece of work? He said, oh, I didn't make anything. It was already there. All I had to do was see it and then look at what needs to be removed to bring David out.
Right.
I think people are the same way. I think that internally inside, we have this brilliance, this magnificence, this amazing part of us out of us. Our job is to remove this stuff it's not serving us so that we can show up the way that we want to.
And that's awesome. Now, I know we're limited on time. There's so much more, and I've got to have you back because there's just so much more with your energy and what you do. It's just invigorating. So, where can people find out more about you on the internet, your website, etc.? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so on my website right now, it's you can find me at Mastering Change, MASTING change.com. Mastering Change, like that's what you're coming to me to do, is to master change. You can reach me on Facebook. I believe it's Facebook, and then it's official Steven Twohig. I think if you just search for my name, you'll find me. There's not a whole lot of there's a couple, but not a lot of Steven Twohigs. Find me on Instagram. Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn. Like I'm all over, and I spend a lot of my time on Facebook because that's where my jam. That's where most people that I'm interacting with need the most help. But I'm also on LinkedIn doing a lot of stuff for businesses, sales, and helping people really step through what's keeping them stuck. So
awesome, and we'll be sure to put all that information in the show notes because there's a plethora of information that you have and services that you can help people with. So we'll definitely be doing that. And Steve, is there anything else you can tell anybody real quick, a quick note for people to focus on before we finish up here?
Yeah. We're in interesting times. The reality is that the story is, we've got COVID, we've got political unrest, we've got riots, and that brings up a cultural shadow, a collective shadow of fight or flight. And, the world is in pain right now. And I believe, again, if you've studied what I've studied, most people are coming to the same belief I am, that we're entering into the third stage of birth as a human species. So within, so below, so below, so below, right? We have a birthing process as kids. We probably have a birthing process as a society as well. And I think that we're feeling the pressure of waking up. And so, my invitation to you, I'm not talking about coming studying under me. I'm not talking about coming work with me. I'm talking about it's time for the world to wake up. It's time for us as individuals and as a collective to come together and find those things that we can all agree on: love, respect, commonality. And if your neighbor is suffering, now is the time. We all spend a lot of time waiting at a stoplight for the light to change green to say, now is my time to be who I was meant to be. But, the reality is that it's like the old Marianne Williams quote. How's it go? My deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. My deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It's not your light, not your darkness, but your light that most scares you. And who, there's nothing enlightened about playing small so that the world won't feel insecure around you. We're all meant to shine as children do. And when I'm liberated from my fears, my presence automatically liberates others. That's what the world needs right now. The world needs the best version of Bob. The world needs the best version of you. We cannot continue to go down this road of projecting my fears, my anger on another tribe because they don't have the same belief systems. It's time for me to do my work so that I can be in relation with you, so that I can then help now push the ball where it needs to go. Because if we keep going down the road we're not going on the right path.
Wow. And I'll just end it there with wow. Thank you for that, Steve. I mean, that's awesome. We appreciate that. We appreciate what you're doing. I look forward to, catching up with you again because there's a lot more information I'd love to share with people. So I look forward to it so much, Steve. Thank you again for your time today to be a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. Remember, if you're gonna buy into a story worth telling.
Thank you. We will. Appreciate it, Steve. You take care. You have a great day.
You too.